Good evening, everyone. Afternoon or morning, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, wherever you find yourself. And welcome to another edition of the exciting OptionVue Essentials for this July 11th, 2013. I'm Jeremy Truelove, Tech Support and Network Administration here at OptionVue. And today I'd like to take you through two topics, one of which I'll have to just introduce because it's a longer one that we'll have a longer dedicated video for in the future. But first, I want to talk about the Recon field, or the R column in your T-log. What it is, why we use it, and how. It's something that I've noticed talking to you guys over the years now that is underused or unused, and really it can help streamline your entire trading process and how you track all of the different strategies and things you use on a single asset, help you cut down on how many accounts you have to have and how much extraneous clicking you do. And the second thing is kind of a newer development, if you will. It's finally gotten cheap enough, fast enough, and so on, that is really useful, is the use of what's called a virtual private server. So I'd like to talk a little about that as well. And so, of course, the first question with VPS is, say what? Most people, it's a new concept. It's basically, it's like people know sometimes about things like go to my PC or log me in where you can remote control another computer. Well, it functions from your perspective as the client very much like that, except that, of course, instead of controlling a single actual physical workstation computer somewhere, it's kind of just a fake virtual piece of software running. And what that allows companies to do is to have a single big piece of hardware that they can allow many people to access like that, although each one of you doesn't see anybody else in your own little world. And as it pertains to us as OptionVue customers, it's a really great way to run OptionVue, especially if you live some part of the world that your connection to New York is not that fantastic, which is most places, unfortunately. And therefore, maybe your connection when you're browsing through, you're back testing and you're collecting a lot of data, your performance is not what you'd like it to be. Well, this is one way to kind of skip around that by having a virtual private server in New York. But first, let's go over the Recon field. So I'm just going to share my desktop here with you. One moment while that loads. There we go. There's my messy desktop, sorry. And I've already loaded up the Russell matrix here. So what I want to show is how we can use the Recon field. The primary functionality of the Recon field is to keep multiple sets of transactions, multiple legs or even multiple entire positions, separate within the same account. So I'm only going to use the single account here, account 1, but I'm going to have several different strategies going on the Russell at the same time. So for example, I have this simple butterfly on right now, and I look at it and I say, okay, fine, I'm going to do that. So I can convert those, so now they're in my transaction log. And then I say, well, what if I also want to do some sort of silly, probably not a good trade, who knows, just for example purposes only, some calendar. And then what if I want to get really crazy and go out and do a vertical spread out here in November? Well, I can do all those. And then when I look at my analyze, it looks like kind of a mess. We've got all these positions up. You can see every single one of those is being analyzed. And that may or may not meet my needs as far as looking at these trades and saying, is this really something that's worth doing or not? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our transaction log and we're going to look at all the trades we've just made. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, in my R column here, I'm going to left click one time so that I get the cursor in there. And then the super ninja trick, it's a technical term, Control N as in November on your keyboard. So hold down Control, push and release N, which of course means new or next. And it will give you the next available letter. So because this transaction log was empty, it just gives me the A. A couple things to note here. One is this is case insensitive. So A is the same thing as big A. Although OptionVue will tell you, it will change it into a big A for you if you change any of these other fields, such as the price or so on, to let you know that it's been adjusted. But in terms of the functionality, how it groups them, how it does all the things that it does with the Recon field, those letters are still the same. That's just a little thing to help you out. So I'm going to name my my butterfly A, and I'm going to letter my horizontals B and my vertical C. Now that I have them grouped separately, I can track them separately. So I say OK. And the easiest way is a feature we added recently where you can do existing position. So what constitutes E when I hit E here? Is it all existing positions? Or, oh, now that I've put those letters in, now I have this choice here, A, B, or C. So if I want to look at only the butterfly, I can do so. And we see up in this box, which always shows us what it is that we're analyzing. We can see I do, in fact, just have my 3 legs. Similarly, we could, of course, choose B, see just my calendar, or C and see just my vertical. Let me zoom out so you can actually see the, as you might expect, shape. Now, that's easy enough, but it becomes sort of more interesting when you start making adjustments to things, and that's when it gets really kind of crazy to be keeping track of all these in the more manual way, which we could do either by month, by selecting a month like this. Then we would only see this butterfly because this happens to be the only trade in this month. But this leg could just as easily be here as well. So we can have a little more fine control over the transaction log. And this will allow us to do that. So we can have in the transaction log, let's say, okay, oops, this butterfly turned out it was terrible. So I'm going to adjust this down, or not terrible, it was just kind of bad. So I'm just going to adjust it down and leave a little bit of it on so that I can, hopefully, maybe it'll turn around, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to adjust down and move it on to something else. So I did so, but maybe my adjustment is not another portion of this butterfly. Maybe my next little piece is going to be some other little spread I do somewhere else. So I could go over here, put on another, oops, except I typed in the wrong place, excuse me. So it helps if you type in the trade field. And then I could convert that. Now that I've got all those, is this vertical spread? Is this part of my vertical spread strategy? Well, no, that's actually an adjustment to my sort of the thing I had going on with this butterfly. So in my mind, I want to group those in a way that would be impossible for OptionVue to know, right? It knows, you can see that it guessed that this was an adjustment on my butterfly and automatically made them A's for me. But this other spread, there's no way it could know. So if we just put A's in there, now when we go back and look at our A, we can see that it's now this combo. So we can see the effect that my adjustment had on my spread. That is the kit and caboodle, because otherwise what OptionVue will do is, as I showed there with my butterfly, it will try to guess. It's fairly good at it. If it matches certain patterns about, you're short this and long that, but once it gets any kind of complicated, there's no way for it to know. And if it ever doesn't know, it just doesn't mark it automatically. It just leaves that blank. So it's up to you to actually go in and double check those and fill those in and make sure they're okay. So one thing people run into, especially if you're backtesting and you have some sort of large strategy on, is they run out of letters. And the one thing to know about letter use is that as time progresses, you can go ahead and reuse a letter as long as at some point that entire position was closed out. So another way to say it is each individual letter persists as long as there is any open position whatsoever. So if I have one little tiny leg of something open and it belongs to A, the Recon group A, that Recon group, anything else that gets an A will belong to that same group. There must be a gap in time of at least 1 minute, or else OptionVue thinks those are all contiguous, so to speak, even though they may or may not actually be. So it's really important that you watch your transactions and actually are closing out everything when it does, either when you do buy or sell to close it out, or it gets, of course, assigned expired, and so on. So let me just show you that. So what we do is, let's say our B here that I made, which was this August-September calendar, if I close that out, I just switch to B here, make it easy on myself. And let's say I just close that out before anything expires or whatnot. And I convert trades, and now that is completely closed out. I look at my T-log and I say, okay, I bought, I sold, I was short these ones, I was long these ones, okay, and that matches up, and that matches up. So now there's nothing with B that's open. So B has now, it's done. So now if I went in and did something else and also gave it a B, doesn't matter. Even though they're all very close in the T-log and everything, those are now separate. So if I looked in my status or in my reports later, I would see those broken out as separate and those as though it were letter D or something else. The only exception to that is, of course, in the real time where we're analyzing, because that one has already been closed, I can't analyze it anymore unless I go into Backtrader. So sorry, that's a little weird there, but that's what happens. It has to be completely closed out. So that's the way to remember. That letter becomes free again. It becomes usable again once I've closed out once at any time, every single position that owned that letter gets closed out. So that's the basics of the Recon field. Now what that allows you to do there is I see too many people where they'll have like 4,000 accounts. They'll have, we literally had a guy had 400 accounts. And I was like, dude, okay, you don't need 400. So here's what you can do. What he was doing, of course, for every single strategy he was trying, down to the finest detail level, he was creating a separate account so that all of his transactions for that account would be grouped. And for the most part, that's not really necessary. It does help to create new accounts for certain conditions, certain things, and that's going to be about maybe half a preference thing and half sort of a reality of making things efficient. Right, if you have a massive, massive account and you've had it for 5 years and it has all those transactions in there, well, you're sort of wasting your time because that's all those transactions that OptionVue is having to worry about. Are those ever really going to affect anything in the modern time? Those things from 5 years ago? No. So we really don't need to be worrying about those. And there are functions that we can go over some other time on different essentials for taking care of those, getting those out of there. But for us, we want to keep anything relevant to itself, together. Help you say, oh, look, on the Russell, this is what I've been doing. This was strategy A, this was B. Here's how they worked out, and so on. And so that is the short and nasty of the Recon field. And I did see a couple questions come in, so just one sec. From Dan, yep, this is OptionVue Essentials. I'm Jeremy Truelove, so I was just going over the Recon field. Sorry for that. Right, if you end up with more than 26 trades, so the two things to remember, as I went over with the Mike, as they close out, then you can reuse it. And the other thing is these are all per asset. So if I had another set of trades going on, say, the SPX, let me just, before I do that, let me open my T-log here. So let's say one that I didn't close out. So I never touched this letter C, for example, in the RUT. So if I go into my SPX and I had some kind of, who cares, right? Just demonstration purposes only, trade going, I could give this one letter C. And it would be, even though these trades both exist in time, they're both open at the exact same time, because one is in one asset and one in the other, that's perfectly fine as far as OptionVue is concerned. Everything will function in group correctly. None of your reports will be messed up or borked by that. So it's completely fine. If you have more than 26 strategies going simultaneously in a single asset, wow. No, but that would be, and you could have that. If you do have that, there are a few non-character characters. Sorry, that doesn't make sense, but non-letter characters, I should say, I'm sorry, that will work. And I don't actually know exactly what they all are, but we can try them just by doing this. And then OptionVue will complain at you when you hit one that it hates. So I know there are some that don't work, but there are quite a few that work okay. So I'm just trying on my keyboard. This is basically every number rather, and then but with shift held down. There's some brackets will work. Slashes and things. Wow. This has been expanded since the last time I tried to put stuff in here. So as you can see, pretty much kind of anything will work in there. Any single character. So you can do your ampersands. Oh, no, see, ampersand doesn't work. But caret does. %, $, and so on. I will write down and I will get a comprehensive list of all the characters that are available. So we can have a complete list, which will then bump it to, say, 38, 39. Right, Bob, excellent point. You can also use the ordinal 1 through 9. So that'll get you up to at least now, what, 45 or 46 with all the special characters we just went over. And at that point, then, if you are up in the 50s, then I would say you're looking at, okay, well, let's think about, is there a way you could divide your strategies into 2 different sets so that you have 2 accounts then for, Russell put only, or, Russell call only, Russell only covered strategies, Russell only plays that are 2 months out or more, some reasonable way to divide up all of your strategies into groups that would make sense for you and hopefully not add a ton of bookkeeping and extra clicking to your, to your analysis, to your life as a trader. So thanks, Bob. That's a good point. Okay. And so with that, on the Recon field, I'd like to move on and talk about virtual private servers. So as I mentioned at the beginning, a virtual private server is just as though you had a physical computer, but it's actually just one little piece of software on a much larger server. So the simplest way for most of us users, is to sign up with a service, which does cost money, but it's not exorbitantly priced usually. And the one I found that seems to work the best and has the best options is, and this is actually kind of common with technology and techie things, the one with the worst website. I went and I researched this several months ago. I started, and it took me forever, and I looked at about 100 different places that offer this kind of service. And I'm not kidding, this is the one with the worst website, but they have the best service. So just a little tech joke there. Not really a joke, I guess, but they're too busy working on their servers and stuff to have their website be all fancy. So for us, it's called Commercial Network Services. I'll supply a link in an email we send out when we have for the recording with this as well, for you to more easily go right to where you need to go. But for us, they have a whole thing tailored to online traders. And they even have deals. You might want to look over here, read more. They have deals with certain brokerages. So I had never heard of these brokerages, but if you had your money with them, you can get a deal. But other than that, what we're interested in is this, the idea of having it in New York. The OptionVue servers, and of course Wall Street itself, are in New York. And so while it doesn't make a massive difference, physical location does actually play a role in how network traffic is routed. It's not as simple as draw a direct line and closer is better. There are lots of other considerations that if anybody is really that interested in a deep dive on internet routing, I would be happy to talk to you about that, but I'm sure most people don't care. But just I say farther is usually worse. So by having the server in New York, what that allows for you is that your OptionVue client and all of its communications that it has to do with our server in New York will be very close to each other. Then the only data that's coming back to you over this potentially much, and almost for sure much worse internet link is the display itself. So all of the processing and all the stuff, all the hardcore stuff goes on very close to each other. So this is things like matrices will open flawlessly every time, no problems. Especially some of our customers that are out, maybe in Australia or Southeast Asia, those cross-Pacific lines are not fantastic. And so their connection to New York, even though their connection, from their internet provider, so from their house to their internet provider's main center in, say, Adelaide, Australia, is fantastic. Well, to get from there to New York has to go across a whole huge, massive network, and it might be terrible, which, especially for Australians, is unfortunately the case most of the time. So a way to kind of get around all that is this virtual private server. So the server itself will be in New York, and you are just sort of sending that display back and forth and those inputs from your mouse and keyboard. So what you do, back to the sort of the step-by-step here, we go and the one I recommend is this $30 one. That's per month. They do have discounts, I believe, if you buy in larger chunks. I just rented it month by month. And then there are some options you should pick. So I clicked the first, I'll go back. So this is their main website, Commercial Network Services. I picked online traders. So they're trader specialized ones. I then picked New York City. Then I picked the value edition rather. And you can see the differences here if you're interested in the techie thing. It's just always more or less. Do you want more CPUs? That costs more money. Do you want more RAM or memory? That costs more money. Do you want more disk space? More money. So it's all a preference of how fast do you want to run versus how much do you want to spend. For our purposes, OptionVue actually is very light on traditional system resources. So we can use up some decent CPU, but this one comes with 2 cores, which is fine. And we don't use a ton of RAM, and we use hardly any disk space at all. So we don't need a ton of that. So what I recommend is this one with a couple of things tweaked up. So I'm going to hit subscribe. And this is where we can say, okay, here we go. So here it is. It's quarterly. So there, you can get a year for the price of 10 months, basically, from these guys if you choose the longer billing cycle. Of course, I recommend starting out with monthly to see if you're happy with it. Now, don't worry about snapshots. That's a backing up thing, which is a topic I did 3-4 weeks ago, and is by itself would be an entire hour we could do on how you back up and why it matters and all that. So we'll skip that for now. 2 cores is plenty for OptionVue. If you do end up using this for other things as well, you might want to consider bumping up to the other one that had 4 cores. One thing we do want to bump up is the RAM. It starts at 640. I recommend going to 1024, which is actually what we call a gigabyte. And it's technically not 1,000, it's 1024. And then also the disk to go from 20 to 30, because that allows you, as they mention here in sort of a roundabout way, to access Windows Server 2008 R2. And the other way to say that would be that's Windows 7 Server, basically. Microsoft decided to not, well, a long time ago now, but it was back in the Windows 2000 days. Windows 2000 was called 2000 Server, 2000 Workstation. And then everything since then has had different names. So just so you know, 2008 R2, 7 Server. 2012 is like Windows 8 Server, and it has the same horrible interface. So I recommend against that, unless that's your thing. They do support a really nice secure thing called 2-factor authentication. And as the name implies, it is 2 things, and it's how you authenticate or prove that you are who you say you are. So with 2-factor, basically you put in a password, and then you set up another way to verify that you are you. And this can be things like they can send a text message with a special one-time code to a number. They can send an email, so on and so forth. I highly recommend that, especially anything like this we're talking about. Managing money and financial resources, very, very important. And actually far better security than even having some ridiculous giant password that's 400 characters and has all kinds of symbols in it. 2-factor is really the way to go, and it is the future of passwords. Such they won't even be passwords. It'll be, send me a code and scan my finger or whatever. Other than that, we don't need anything else on here, except we want to switch off the default of, we don't want Windows 2003. That's like Windows XP Server, if you will. We want 2008 R2. And update your cart. And of course, I'm not going to purchase it here, but continue on. You put in a credit card, so on and so forth. Eventually, they send you an email and they say, hey, your server's ready. At that point, you're ready to set up your shortcut. So that is these things here, and you can see that as I manage all the servers here at work, I have all these different ones. These are for ones here locally or in New York. But here's my one I've set up already for my CNS server. They will give you this information, so you just need to put that in. There's basically the address, so it's an IP and a port, if people want to get technical, and then a username and a password, which it'll be in the email, don't worry. So once you get that set up, you can check out all these different options at your leisure. None of these except in advanced would ever actually break anything, so don't worry, you can play around. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory about what kind of quality do you want. Because whenever we're talking about something like this, where we're controlling a remote computer and we're sending, I wouldn't say a large amount of data, but a fair amount of data from there to you, depending on your connection speed, that might, it might not run the best. It might be a little laggy. A window would come up and display, and then you might have to kind of wait for that to fill in. Excuse me, just one moment. So the options there are, of course, you could either get more bandwidth and, pay more money, and if you can even, right? A lot of areas you're restricted to one or two choices. Or you can turn down the quality. So if it's sending less stuff, well, then you're going to end up getting all of the stuff that there is to get in a faster, because there's less to get overall. So one thing is with the screen, how big it is, how much resolution, and the color depth. So how many colors, how many bits of data is every pixel that's coming over. Local resources, and now in this sense, local refers to the computer that you are actually physically sitting at. And this is what are you going to allow the remote computer to access. I highly recommend the clipboard. This makes it handy for copying and pasting URLs or text out of email back and forth. I recommend turning off printers. You probably don't need to share your local printer at the remote computer. You could turn that on though, and that would allow you to, on the remote computer, hit print and have it actually print at your physically local printer. So, depends. And also with audio, that would allow you, if you're going to plan on streaming video and things, I would say you would want to say play on this computer. Again, sort of Microsoft does not use, not known for and does not use consistent terminology, unfortunately. So this computer means the local machine, and then remote computer is correctly used, the remote computer. So I just turned mine on don't play, but if you were going to use this for, surfing YouTube, so on and so forth, then you'd want that on. I did have one customer who I talked him through setting all this up previously, and he's in a country where a lot of these videos and things are legally not allowed to stream into his country. And so this is a way, because the server's location, right, it's a weird technicality, the server is in New York. So every site you go to will think that you're in New York. So you'll be able to access stuff as though you're in the United States. So that can come in handy. You can also start programs automatically. Most people won't need that. And then this is the other important one, the experience of, in general, you can turn off all these other options to make it faster or slower, or more beautiful, basically. So you can see I have it set to this sort of pretty low speed. We don't have a fantastic connection here in the office, so we have a decent one. So I turn that on because for me, that's my balance between how good does it look versus how annoying is it that I have to, sit and wait for stuff to download. So once it's all set up, you hit connect. And of course, it's not working. Awesome. Problem with these live demos, of course, it was working 14 minutes ago when I tried it to test it out. But until I can diagnose what's going on with that one, I will open up another one just to one of our local servers here so you can see what the experience would be like. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one of our servers that's actually in New York. So even though it's a server I control and I have a dedicated connection to it, well, it's actually not a dedicated connection. I shouldn't use that verbiage. It's a VPN, so I do have a secure connection to it already, although this RDP is fairly secure. It is over the internet, so the performance that you're going to see is representative of what you would see on a VPS type of service. It's not, we're not cheating by going onto a local machine. That's my point. So this is one of our archive servers. It does our archiving for holding all our backtrader. But this is the Windows. You should see now the Windows desktop. It looks like nothing happened, right? It looks like I'm just on some other computer. And this is indeed what it will look like with your virtual server. It's like you're on the computer. You go to computer, you can check out your hard drives, do all the normal things you do on a real physical computer. So for our purposes, though, of course, I want to install OptionVue. So let me just do that real fast. So you're also getting a quick lesson here on how to download OptionVue. The zip file version. And this is not bad. This is I'm sorry that the actual one didn't work. I don't know what happened, but this is actually a very similar thing. Our servers in New York are on, they're in a data center that's very fast, and it's in New York, so it's actually a pretty good, fairly analogous situation. So now this is, I would ordinarily have already had OptionVue ready to go, so sorry. Come on. Okay. So this is the first time, so I'm going to have to log in. If I could type. Okay. I think this is the first time I've run it. So it's going to go and download my daily files. Being in IT will teach you patience. Never had patience as a child, but 20 years in IT will teach you how to do that. So now I have my matrix, my course display rather, sorry, open, and everything is as though I'm on the computer. So you could just like normal, do all your things, start all your asset files, make all your analysis and your trades, and then those files are actually, of course, stored on this actual server. It says local disk C, but that's local to the computer that you're connecting to from its perspective. So that would be, in our terminology before, this is actually the remote computer. It's sort of a strange perspective thing. It almost reminds me of, like in music and in theater, where they say stage left or stage right to sort of alleviate that same thing, where it's like, wait, remote, local is a matter of perspective, so it's a little strange. But this is as though you're at the computer. So when it says local, it means to itself, which is remote to me right now, right? I'm sitting in Chicago. The server is actually in New York. So when I would disconnect, let's say, and then go, and then what I could do is I could go on a laptop at my buddy's house, and I could remote in again. Actually, only one at a time, but I could close it out and then reopen it. And it would be exactly as I left it. So if I left OptionVue running, it's still running. If I left, a trade in the matrix that I was thinking about, and I was like, oh, I gotta go. Something's come up. I could just close it out and walk away from the computer. And so that gets sort of into talking about what are the real benefits of this. Like, why would you want to do this? Okay, so we have this computer. We have a server set up. We can remote in. We can run OptionVue. Yay, right? Well, the biggest advantage, I think, is this ability to access it from anywhere without having to do any additional setup. This is the kind of thing you could set up on your home computer, where you could access your home computer from anywhere. But it's kind of a pain, and depending on who your internet provider is, it can be very difficult. It's getting easier, so it's something to kind of maybe keep an eye on, but I think at this point it's still probably beyond the technical capability of most folks. So it's also a little bit annoying. It can be a little spotty and things. So you're still, if it's your home computer, you're still limited by the durability, so to speak, of your home computer, for one, your home electricity, for another, and your home internet connection, all of which will be far, far worse than what it would be in any data center, even kind of a bad one, let alone an actual good high-end data center where it would take an incredible amount of damage to ever interrupt that service. So that's the biggest reason not to do it at home. The second thing is they do backups and things for you, which each provider will have different settings and different things. But they'll do that for you so that if you do ever screw something up, accidentally delete something, something just gets corrupted, that happens once in a while, you get infected with some virus or something, they can just punch a button and your server basically jumps back in time. Like it restores to some former state. And that's a lot easier when you're doing virtualization like this, which is what this is called. And so they'll do it for you. So you can set those options about how many times you want to be able to go back and when it should take its snapshots, things like that. Another reason is security. So this server is in a physically secure location as well, not just from natural disaster and so on, and wear and tear, because they replace all these computers pretty regularly, but also from malicious people. So, you know, it's much more secure than your home, where any idiot could just break your window and get in. These are always, you know, armed guards, you know, crazy fences, and, you know, it's pretty nutty, some of these, if you've ever been to one of these places. Some of them do offer tours, which I actually recommend. It's kind of a strange thing to do, but it's really neat. They have incredibly complicated systems for everything under this, from even just moving air. Like the guys that are in charge of airflow and those things are, you know, PhD physics guys, having to figure out all that stuff about how many fans and, you know, all this craziness. It's pretty amazing. So from all of that, they also then offer you this level of security that's much superior. They offer the two-factor authentication, which I spoke about, is much better. The physical security is much better. And then for you, often the software security is going to be a lot better than you're going to get at home as well. So you're going to be running on a server OS. Which is going to enforce a good password on you, which is a good start. And the settings they'll have some sort of good firewall setting for you. So you shouldn't be able really to get into too much trouble on your virtual, which will help with security in the long run as well. The other thing to keep in mind is that a virtual, you don't have to run only OptionVue. There's lots of things you could run on there. You could run your entire trading platform, all of your your brokerage platforms, maybe you use a separate charting program, maybe you have whatever it is you have, because you have complete access to this virtual computer. You can install any software on there as you would on any computer. So that's really a handy thing to have. That's how I would trade, I guess. I would say if I do, but if I had more than a few $100s on the line, if I had any serious money on the line, this is where I would have my primary trading going on, is on one of these servers. If nothing else, my executions would be so much better from being on excellent bandwidth and being very close. So one thing I wanted to show you on my other server, and I had ready to go, but was to give you an idea of how much faster the internet is in these data centers than it is in your home, which I already had this speed test ran, so I apologize for this wait, as we're going to have to watch it happen. But just to give you an idea, in my house, I happen to live in a Comcast area, and I have really good internet access. I have 50 megabits, 50, down, and 10 up. And that's, that puts me in like the top 1% in the United States. And as you can see, our server in New York, which is actually not even on as nice a data center as the CNS is, and it has 150. And it'll probably be about the same bidirectionally, a little slower on the upload. So you can see it has easily 3 times as much bandwidth as I had, and when I ran the other one, it was actually 300 and something down and up. So these connections are mega fast. I mean, look at that. The latency is so tiny, that's so crazy. The ping, that's what that's measuring. Ping measures latency, and latency is the amount of time it takes for a message to go out somewhere and come back. So this computer here was able to send a message out to a computer in another data center somewhere, and that message came back, and that entire process took 2/1000ths of a second. So that's really, really good. Anything under 100 milliseconds is really good. Online gamer people will know this is very important. You need to get under 100. And so a 2 is very ridiculous, so that's great. And that's another reason why if you had a local copy of OptionVue here, local to this server, remote to you, it's going to run that much better, because every time you want to open an Amazon matrix, right, every time I click a matrix, I have to send out to the OptionVue server and say, hey server, give me the information about Amazon. Okay, I got it. Okay, give me the information about these options. Okay, I got it. Okay, I'm sitting here waiting. Tell me when we have more data. So all those processes, you're going to hit that amount of lag time every time. So if you can cut that down dramatically, as you would on a virtual server in New York, then you're going to be a lot better off, and you're going to be a lot happier with the performance you get. Especially if your connection is particularly bad, where when it goes and gets this first initial burst of information right here, where it says starting new asset file, about these things, if that is interrupted or corrupted or dies in any way, that's when we have customers where things start happening, like a matrix only gets half filled in with data and things like that, because the program actually doesn't even know about those options. It never got that information. That information took so long to arrive that OptionVue gave up. It was like, forget it, man. It timed out. It's timeout. So if it can't get the data in a certain amount of time, it gives up, so that your program just doesn't freeze up. You'd be waiting there forever. So I did have a question I saw. So an analysis completely offline would not be possible, but you could leave your OptionVue running in side-by-side mode, and it would continuously update. But until you had internet access again and were able to connect in and see it, it wouldn't really have any value for you, other than the fact that, okay, you're on there, you hit that analyze, you walk away, or your internet goes down, you could, go next door or go down to the Starbucks or whatever in your area, somewhere with internet access, and get on, and then you would be back into your trade, into your virtual server, so it would all be set up how you had it set up. So that would be a great thing too for people that travel a lot, or especially like you have a work computer. You don't want to put your OptionVue on your work computer necessarily. It depends on where you work, I suppose, but then you wouldn't have to install it on the work computer. The only thing you would need is that remote desktop, which comes with Windows. So unless your administrators are really, really crazy, you will have that, what they used to call terminal services client, on your computer. I mean, that's going to be 99.9% of people. You'd have to work at, defense company or something to have that disabled. Pretty much everybody will allow remote desktop outbound. So that's another thing you can get around. So yeah, Bob, you do. You install them on the server as though it feels local, but it's not. You're actually on that server. It's as though the technology is transporting you to actually sitting in front of that box that's in a huge warehouse somewhere. That's a good little intro there. This is one of those tech subjects that the rabbit hole goes as deep as you want to go and then some. So if anybody does have any other questions, or would, some kind of area of the whole thing that wasn't clear, or you think needs some additional explanation, feel free to either type it in the chat now, or send either me an email, jeremy@optionvue.com. I'll send that out on the chat. Or to the more generic support@optionvue.com. That will go to all the support staff here. So if I'm out of the office or anything like that, it will go to somebody. And you should always use support if you have a technical problem that you need solved, like immediately. That's the way to get to somebody the quickest way. So. Okay, well, thanks for attending my little seminar here on Recon and Introduction to Virtual Private Servers. I hope it's been at least a little interesting and nobody fell asleep at their keyboard, because I don't have any messages to me that say ASD JKT QRX 9000, so that makes me feel good. And yep, that's pretty much it. If you have anything else, just let me know. I'm always eager to take questions and suggestions, if it's even not about this, but some other aspect of OptionVue that you think, man, you know, why can't I do this? Or why do I have to do this, this, and this in order to accomplish what I want to get done? That's how we improve the program, and I've been really impressed. I've been here just over a year now, about how well we do respond to customer input. So please do feel free to email or call and let us know what we could do better. Because that's the only way we ever are going to do better, is if people say, look, this is not really working. Let's think about this in a new way. Let's come at it from a different angle, or whatever the case. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.